Now on to this. During last year's 16 Days of Activism campaign, former Parktown Boys High School water polo coach Colin Rex was sentenced. He'd admitted to over 100 counts, including sexual assault against schoolboys. The case highlighted the need for more conversation on male rape and molestation. To talk more about this, I'm joined in studio by founder of Matrix Men, Martin Pelders, Executive Director at the South African Male Survivors of Sexual Abuse, Reese Mann, a clinical psychologist, Lungile Lichisa, and Director of Matrix Men, Hungani Ndlovu. Welcome to the show this morning.
Thank you.
Lungile, if I might just start with you. What constitutes to abuse or male rape, and what do we tell our children to help them differentiate between what is appropriate and inappropriate when it comes to how adults interact with them?
So basically, sexual assault or sexual abuse is anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. We often think of it as rape with penetration, but it could just be touching. It could be forcing a child or an adult to watch something they don't want to watch. It could be kissing. It could basically anything that makes you feel uncomfortable.
And what are the warning signs? How, if I suspect that my child is being abused, what should I take notice of?
So you'll notice that your child, there will possibly be a change in their behavior. So there will be, for example, if it's a boy child, they may be more aggressive. There will be a loss of concentration at school. The teachers will also pick up that, you know, marks are dropping. This child is not the child that they used to be. There will be probably a loss of interest in activities that they used to enjoy doing. They'll probably isolate themselves. You'll know, if you know your child, you will see that there's a difference in this child.
So Martin, to introduce you to this conversation, what does your organization do exactly?
We support male survivors of sexual abuse and rape. We also, one of the most important things I think we're doing at this point in time is we're raising awareness about the issue that boys can be raped. You know, statistics, and worldwide it says 1 in 6, and we have credible studies in South Africa that put it between 39 and 44%. So it's an endemic thing that is happening in this country, and it's something that we really need to start talking about more effectively.
And are you finding that more cases involving the boy child being abused are being raised now? And have campaigns like the Me Too campaign allowed more men to speak out about their own experience of abuse?
It's been a double whammy. I think things like the Me Too is when men stand up and talk about it, then a lot of the female victims turn around and say that you hijacking our campaign. And it shouldn't be like that. You know, I found there's this division between, it's almost like it's a competition between men and women, which it isn't. You know, there are victims and there are perpetrators, and I think we need to treat everybody fairly. I mean, this morning, for instance, a case broke in the news where 40 boys were kidnapped, and some of those were raped, and it was at a soccer coaching school. So here in Johannesburg, you know, I mean, 40 kids, it's endemic. It's a terrible plague in this country, and something that we really, really need to start speaking about more earnestly.
And cases like the Parktown Boys school incident, which has been widely reported, is this just a drop in the ocean?
It's not. I think, and Reese will concur with me on this, is that I think this is happening in many, many schools. We're getting reports from different schools, high-profile schools in this country, where this sort of thing is happening and has been happening for a long time. It seems to be a culture almost. And the report that was done by Luke Blumbrecht, where he said there is a culture of sexual hazing and sexual abuse and that sort of thing in schools, is spot on. And it's up to schools now to pick up the cudgels and say, let's put something in place to actually prevent this and to actually wipe it out.
So, Reese, what can be done to encourage more men to speak out?
I think first it's a societal problem because society generally don't believe that men can be sexually abused. And I think it's the way we socialized right from the beginning, that men are supposed to protect themselves. Men have got the authority. So a lot of the ways we brought up, the society with which we live makes it very difficult for men to be able to come forward. And as there's more advocacy and as we hearing more of it in the press, so more and more men will be coming forward. I mean, in the Parktown Boys case, there's other schools now who are starting to address the issue and there's young boys who are coming out, or young boys who were abused maybe 30 years ago, who are now coming forward. So it's to break that shame and that blame that society is giving male survivors.
And why do men have this shame? Is speaking out on an issue like being victimized or abused seen as being demasculating of sorts?
Totally. I think it is. It's considered like a form of weakness, that you weren't there to protect yourself. And then a lot of the myths come into play why people don't come forward, because society thinks they are to blame. They are to blame for it. Then they believe that if males are sexually abused, they're going to become abusers themselves. So like boys are considered by society, wrongly so, that they are perpetrators in waiting. And it's the shame and the blame and the questions of your own sexual identity, the questions of how does society see you as a male compared to other males. And these are the issues that have to seriously be addressed.
Hungani, what has motivated you to join Matrix Men?
So I previously was in a domestic violence relationship, and prior to joining Matrix Men, we only, or rather it only focused on sexually abused males. And when I spoke to Martin, I told him my story, and I was like, I need a place where I can go. And I'm pretty sure that there are many other guys that have been through what I've been through, and not just older, but also that are my age and younger. I mean, we do talks at schools, and there's kids that are 15, 14 who tell us that their girlfriends force them to do things that they don't want to do, and they don't have a place to go until we have been there and they realize that, okay, it's okay to talk about these things. So that's essentially why I felt it was important to be a part of this.
And do you feel that the experience has helped you personally?
I mean, I believe so, because I don't think I would have been involved if I hadn't gone through that experience. So yeah, definitely I think I also grew as a person, because I mean, I don't think anyone grows up wanting to be in such a situation, but once you've been in that situation, you get to a point where you just have to take it as a learning curve and then see what you can take out of it. For me personally, I'm trying to look at it as a positive thing for my life and not a negative thing.
And are you comfortable telling us what happened to you exactly?
Oh yeah, of course. So essentially, I was in this relationship whilst I was still studying overseas, and our relationship started off as many relationships do, puppy love and everything is all amazing, and it got to a point where insecurities were very strong from my partner at that time, and it got to a point where it just broke loose, because I guess there were certain things I didn't understand about her, and she literally started hitting me and started throwing vases at me, threw my laptop at me. It became very, very toxic very, very quickly, and my parents would see me with scars when I would visit at home, and I would try and cover them up sometimes, but sometimes I just wouldn't be able to. So essentially it just became very violent, and it would then result to like little things, because we had already reached that level of violence where if I left the toilet seat open, then it's no longer a Hungani, you left the toilet seat open, and you know I don't like that. Then it would become a physical thing, because that bottle was already popped. So that's essentially, to put it in a nutshell, what happened.
And Lungile, are you finding that there are more and more cases similar to Hungani's experience? Are you hearing more such incidents?
Unfortunately, most of the time, if you have a male client walk into your practice, they won't necessarily come and disclose within the first few sessions that, you know, the reason why I'm here is because I was a victim of abuse. They will normally present with other things such as depression or substance use. Then only later, when they feel comfortable and if they choose to disclose, only then will they disclose.
Yeah. And as an adult man who's experienced abuse, what would you say, or rather, if I may pose it like this, what areas of your life are often impacted by cases of abuse?
I would say the biggest one is feeling less masculine, It's been said that, boys are raised and socialized to be tough and strong. And, ideally, as a man, they should be the ones that are assertive, the ones that are independent, sexually potent, and anything less than that can be seen as a failure of masculinity. It becomes a case where you'll find that the adult male now becomes very insecure. They may get serious social anxiety because then they don't feel like they fit in with the other men around them. It could present in ways where they use substances to cope with the pain because they don't know what to do with that sense of failure, sense of who they're supposed to be.
And Martin, if you can just tell us about your experience, what was your coping mechanism and what exactly had happened to you?
Ooh, I had many coping. So I was sexually abused by women and men from, as far as I can remember, about the age of 5 up to the age of 19. That kind of disposes of the myth that only men are perpetrators, because I had 2 or 3 female perpetrators in my life that I can remember. So I then started at the age of 13. I think I started drinking quite heavily. I would binge drink on weekends and any opportunity that I get. By the age of 42, I was a bottle-a-day alcoholic. Pornography was another coping mechanism that I used, a very popular one, sex and pornography for survivors. And also, I was just angry. I hated the world. I hated life. I would wake up in the morning and go, oh, no, I'm still alive. It just was depression, anxiety. There was so much pressure on me. And of course, because of that, my marriage was toxic. It was just so dysfunctional. Again, a lot of violence in my marriage as well. Same sort of thing that Pungani suffered. Yeah.
And when did you realize you need help? And if you can just try and motivate other men to also encourage them to speak out if they've been abused. Yeah.
Strangely enough, it was watching the Oprah Winfrey show. They had a show called The 200 Men, and that was the first time I sat and watched other men talking about my life. And that was the most incredible thing for me, because they knew me so well. I was just sitting there going like, hey, you're talking about me. Why are they talking about me? And I started listening to that, and that's when I realized that I was sexually abused. I mean, I repressed those memories so deeply that I couldn't retrieve a lot of them. It took 3 years to start getting a lot of the memories out. And even today, a lot of memories sort of resurface slowly. As I'm going through life, I'm triggered by something, and it'll bring up a memory, and then I'll go, oh, my word, okay, that as well. So that it was hearing other men talking about their experiences that caused me to come out. And one important thing I need to point out is that it takes men and women that were sexually abused on average 21 to 27 years to actually report that abuse. So it takes a long time. And we've had cases. I had a guy of 70 phoning me saying, wow, I've just read an article in the newspaper about you, and now I finally realize he's 70 years old. It happened to him when he was a boy of 16 in a very exclusive school in Bloemfontein. And it took him that long to finally admit that he was sexually abused as a boy.
And what do you say to that boy or man who may be asking themselves, what do I do about the abuser?
I think the abuser, with the statutes, let's call it the statute of limitations, that's now been eliminated in South Africa. So you could prosecute somebody that raped you or abused you 20 years ago, 30 years, 40 years ago. That's fallen away now. So don't worry about the abuser right now. Worry about yourself. Start working on you. Start coming out and talking about it. Phone groups like Semsoso or Matrix Men. Get support. Find yourself a good therapist that understands and knows what they're doing in the sector, and work on yourself. You can prosecute your abuser in 20 years' time if you want to. It doesn't matter. So don't worry about them. Deal with your problems. Deal with your issues. Work on yourself, and everything will fall into place.
And in wrapping up, or rather in closing, shortly, if you can just tell us, is recovery possible?
Absolutely, recovery is possible.
100%.
I mean, the journey starts in the beginning about sharing your experiences with somebody who is empathetic, because then you've broken the silence. Because abuse always happens within a silence where boundaries have been changed. So that is the first step. And then it's working with a whole lot, working with your therapist, and working with what we offer is peer-to-peer support, where there's an understanding that it has happened to other men. So recovery is totally, totally possible.
Pungani?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I'm in a very, very happy relationship at the moment, and I have not looked back, not even for a single second. And I think the most important thing, which is what's been going on here, is that we have to talk about it. And for those men or boys that are out there, it's okay to talk about it. And I think that the biggest thing is that they feel and we felt like it wasn't okay to talk about it.
Lungile, is recovery possible?
Absolutely. Remember that with abuse, be it sexual or domestic or any type of abuse, it's about taking away your control and your power. So in recovery, you gain that sense of self back, your agency, your voice, you take control. It is absolutely possible.
Yeah, we need to speak out as men. Well, that was our founder of Matrix Men, Martin Pelders, Executive Director at the South African Male Survivors of Sexual Abuse, Reese Mann, Clinical Psychologist Lungile Lechisa, and Director at Matrix Men, Hungani Ndlovu.